So I have no problem talking about politics as long as folks understand that, the points of view are individual and they are not meant to persuade or dissuade you, from anything or this or that or the other. And I will be honest as to how I learn, right? So I was a lifelong Republican, voted Republican my entire adult life until January 6th, 2020.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
in January 6th, 2020, after what happened at the Capitol building, and what that alone wasn't what made me leave the Republican Party. It was the Republican Party's response to what happened on January 6th made me leave. So understanding that I am a 12-year military veteran and I have the utmost respect for this country, utmost respect for the Constitution, and I firmly believe that the peaceful transition of power is incredibly important. I I had been following the news leading up to the election. I had seen the stage being set to declare the election was stolen before it even happened in various interviews. And at that point it was uncertain. You know, I
Yep.
I
Yep.
voted for Trump in his first term, not because I thought that he was the right person for the job. I voted for him because he was running against Hillary Clinton. And after what Hillary Clinton did with Benghazi, turning, not giving the folks the support that they needed. I felt that if she can't handle the State Department, she can't handle the White House. And so I voted for Trump. And when he went for the second term, after seeing him in office, I said, okay, this isn't a great thing. So I voted for Biden,
Right.
and Biden
So,
won.
right. And today was inauguration day.
Yep.
Yes.
Today was inauguration day, and I voted for Biden again this time because I don't
Yep.
think that we should have a megalomaniac sitting in the most powerful office in the world.
Well, let's talk about, and I agree with you. I voted for Biden too. And a couple of things. Aside from all the political stuff today, there is interesting. Trump took the oath of office without putting his hand on the Bible. Some people noted that. The other thing that came out today that I saw was that Vivek Ramaswamy, hope I'm saying his name right, has been asked to get out of Dodge, or Doge, I guess, in this
Yes.
case.
So my understanding is he stepped down from Doge because he is planning on running to
Running
be
for governor of
governor of
Ohio.
Ohio, right? But
But
also,
which came first? Get out of Dodge and then run for governor, or run for governor and get out of Dodge? Is
I,
it
I
Doge or
think I
Dodge?
think the two kind of fell in together. I know that him and Musk did not see eye to eye on several issues.
Does Musk see eye to eye with anybody on issues? I mean,
I mean, I don't know. He is
I don't know. Maybe
definitely
we're getting into the
eccentric.
wrong thing here. I don't know. I mean, but I'm sorry. I have no respect for him. Well, ever since he did the Cybertruck, honestly, but I think of it.
Well, I look at SpaceX and I am profoundly amazed at what SpaceX does and at their level of innovation and how they are rapidly advancing the technology that goes into space travel. I mean, when you capture a booster rocket on the same arm that it launched from, which happened recently, that is pretty darn impressive.
But the last one exploded. But I know. But I agree with you. That's there. But is
Well, the
that
stage
more
one
of
booster
a?
they caught.
There was one that caught and they caught it and exploded. I think. But the question is that more a endorsement of private enterprise or an indictment of NASA? in that case.
Well, I mean,
In terms of that, have we let NASA go down the hill so that they just said, okay, private enterprise takes it over? Well,
so
I'm not
let's
saying
come
anything
back to
wrong with
that.
that.
Let's come back to that because we kind of went off on a tangent from the politics stuff.
Well, we did, but that's what this is. This is just, tangential rambling. But yes, okay.
Right.
Yes.
So Trump went ahead and got, he got, sworn in today. So a couple of things, right? I am not one of those. He's not my president. He's the president of the United States, and he is due the respect and honor that comes with the office. And while Trump did a lot of weird,
I don't know. I mean, proven otherwise, respect and honor don't necessarily come to mind when I think about that. But there is the office.
well,
I respect the office, but not necessarily the person in the office.
right. So as an example, right, when I was in the army, I had good soldiers and not so good soldiers. I had good leaders and bad leaders, right? They both were called sir if you're good or bad,
Yep,
right?
yep,
Because
yep.
you respect the rank, if you will, right? You
Right.
respect the rank. Um, and arguably, Trump, when he was in his first term, he did some pretty good things with
Did a
regards
lot of
to.
bad things too.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and I won't skip over that. But as an example, clamping down on NATO, getting the NATO allies to pay. So each country in NATO was supposed to pay an X percent of their GDP to their defense. And the US was the only country, and you can check my facts because I'm not putting these as facts, I'm going off of what I remember. Not everybody was paying their fair share, and he made us think about it. And these countries started to increase their spending. Whether or not it's the fair share or not, I don't know, but they did increase the NATO spending so that the U.S. wasn't footing all of the bill off the
Sure, you
lion's
can
share.
look at it. I mean, even a broken clock is right twice a day, as they say in there too. But then I see
Um,
things like he's wanting to establish the External Revenue Service. Have you seen that one?
so there are things he says, and so the funny thing is, going back to the 2016 election, when I first voted for him, I had assumed that the guy on the campaign trail was the same guy that was on The Apprentice, in that once
Are we
he
saying
got
hi to somebody?
yeah and once that he got in office, that he would settle in and do the job. Little did I realize that that was his actual personality and that he's not really multifaceted, right? And it's like,
Right. I mean,
okay,
there's a thing about if you're going to do that job, I think you have to be a doer. You have to be someone who is going to follow through. Now, on the other hand, there is a whole line of thinking which says basically that the saving grace for those who, believe that it's going to be as terrible as it seems, the saving grace is that he is incompetent and is not going to be able to accomplish things in there because of the turnover, for example, with Ramaswamy and stuff like that.
right.
So, yeah.
Well, so,
And
in his first term, there were staffers that would covertly, if you will, take direct steps to prevent bad things from happening.
yep,
They would lose paperwork. They would not follow up on requests because they felt that they were bad. Now, I can tell you that, that is, for any leader, that is not good. When your staff is going behind your back to undermine what it is you're trying to accomplish, that's not good. But and many of these published books about them, but when you hear in the news what he was asking and things that never made to light, it's like, well, while yes, you shouldn't do that, I understand why you did, and I support your decision because that's bad. We shouldn't do that, whatever that thing was. Right. And so I suspect there'll be some of that going on internally this time around.
Well, let's put it into perspective here. I mean, 'cause one of the things, has been I've heard the Pentagon, if you believe the stories, as like making preparations for what if he asked for the military to enforce certain things on American citizens. Would the military
So
actually
for
do it?
example, if he decided to suspend the Constitution of the United States, right, and he decided to disarm the American population because the Constitution is suspended, and he
Uh-huh.
decided to tell the Secretary of Defense to give the order.
Get rid of the Second Amendment rights, basically.
Yep. Well, if you suspend the Constitution, then you don't have any rights because the Constitution is suspended, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and, I'm not saying he would do this, but if he did, and I was the Sec Def or a general or whatever, I would refuse. Now,
Right.
don't get me wrong. They're going to fire me, maybe even imprison me, right? And they will find someone to carry out the order. But in the end, right, all of us as Americans need to understand that we have the freedoms that we have because of this piece of paper that was written and ratified in 1787. And if we don't abide by that, then we lose the very foundation of who we are as a country.
And interestingly, I was reading a book, and I'll have to go back and find it, but it was basically a historian wrote it, and it was all about the presidents and the Constitution. And it was basically the point was, this is not the first time that a president has allegedly tried to, sidestep things in the Constitution. Even back as far as, I think, James Adams, back in that time, and Warren Harding, in terms of like slavery and stuff, there were things they did to basically try to sidestep things, like, was it the 19th Amendment for slavery and stuff? But it was, the point was, this was
I
not the
think the
first
19th
time.
Amendment was prohibition, wasn't it?
Maybe, one of them was women's right to vote. Okay. I don't know my amendments, but basically it was all about, like, after the
Feel free
Civil
to
War.
comment and tell us where we're wrong, by the way.
Do what?
I said, feel free to comment to tell us where we're wrong for
Oh,
the one
yes,
or
I'm
two
sure
people
people
that might
will.
actually listen to this.
Well, they got past the bidet stuff, and they're still with us. More power to them. Hey, we started with the end in mind. Sorry,
Boom.
Stephen Covey. All right. What were we saying? Oh, yeah. But this is not the first time. Thank you for that virtual rim shot. Yeah. Uh, but we have, this is not the first time this has happened in there. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be an interesting ride. It's going to be an interesting time. And, it's the thing that I found interesting too is somebody pointed out that at this point, in some viewpoints, the Trump is no longer an asset, but a liability to some Republicans as they are looking towards 2 years down the road and the election. If he
Right.
pisses enough
Well,
people
part of
off.
that depends, right? Part of that depends on what's next, right? So, Trump can't run again.
uh
Um, However, typically the incumbent vice president will run when the sitting president can't run again. So that puts J.D. Vance in the spotlight.
And by the way, where has J.D. Vance been all this time? He's just been like missing in action. But
Well, I mean, no, he's taken a back seat because that's what Trump wanted him to do. I mean, when you take a look at Pence, you didn't hear a whole lot about Pence in those 4 years until after the election results.
yeah, but I mean, just given like where Musk has been out there and stuff like that, you have not heard squat from Vance. So, if he's the vice president, you would think he would want to, I'm not suggesting the right thing, but even to echo, some
Well,
of the
no, he's
things
been in the
that
media.
say.
If you Google around. He's been in the media. It's just it's
But you
not
have to
getting the
dig
same
for
level of
it.
attention. Well, but
You
that's the
have to
media
dig for it.
deciding what to move to the top and what not, right? And so there's
Perhaps.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the funny thing was, I watched the one and only vice presidential debate.
Oh, I do too.
Yep, and several things about that struck me. The first was the level of civility. It's like, how refreshing is this? You had two
Absolutely.
people.
It wasn't batshit crazy.
Yeah, and they, not only were they civil, but they weren't afraid to say, I agree with some of what you're saying, and that's important.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so
Yep.
I thought that
I
was
agree.
good. And
Yep.
what I found that questions for Vince fell into two main areas. Questions that would put him in a bad light with Trump, and questions that wouldn't.
Well,
Right.
that could be true
And
for any candidate, right?
that's it. Well, so I'll give you an example. They asked him, if you were Mike Pence in that situation, would you have done what the president asked? And he answered a different question. He didn't say yes and didn't say no, because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
But that is typical sort of, that's a typical thing. I remember years ago at a company we both used to work for, I was deposed, and I was deposed by lawyers in a patent infringement lawsuit. And one of the things the lawyers told me on the company side was that you don't have to answer the question that's given. You answer the question you want to answer. So this is sort of a strategy there too. But I agree with you. I agree with you that this is a thing, but it was a strategy.
One thing that struck me is that when he was asked specific policy questions, not in every case, but many of the cases, I was like, I could get behind that. I agree with that. Right?
Now, who's
So
he in
Trump,
this case? Is that
yeah,
Vance?
that Vance, yes. So Trump does the weave, right? And that's what he calls it. He calls it the weave, where he
He does
will,
something. I don't know what I
yeah,
call it.
it's how he
It's more like I
communicates.
would liken it to weaving between the lanes and the highway, and kind of going back and forth. Anyway, trying to find
And
your way. But
so it's hard to gain an understanding when he's doing that of where he is on any given topic, because he doesn't stay on topic.
he doesn't
And
understand it himself. Anyway,
well, that may very well be the case.
my opinion.
I'm not looking to alienate any one of Pitt's sides here. But all that being said and done, the next 4 years are going to be interesting. My biggest concern is that he greenlights Putin to do whatever he wants, and Putin decides to get the band back together, back in the Soviet Empire before the fall of the Berlin Wall, which has him going into NATO countries, and then Article 5 gets invoked, which says if you attack one, you attack us all. And Trump basically walks away from NATO, and we leave Europe holding the bag, because that's going to start World War III.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And
And
we should do a whole podcast on survival tips and uh,
absolutely.
prepping for that. We could do a whole thing on that. Yeah.
So
No, I agree with you.
that's a real concern. I think our economy is going to be fine. The guy has an eye for business, whether we like it or not.
Bankruptcy is not necessarily, though, something I can say is good experience there multiple times. So I don't know. I don't.
I think when you get to that level, right? Knowing when to cut your losses and move forward, and bankruptcy is a mechanism. Is it a mechanism I support? Not necessarily, but if you make a bill, pay
Yeah,
your bill.
but there's just been so many times he hasn't paid contractors and hasn't owned up to his responsibilities. But anyway, we could have a whole podcast about this.
Yeah, yeah. Let's move on.